Welcome, 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 welcome. Hey, it's good to have you here on the program. Tell me your story. You know me. We get together at least 4 times a week, if not more often. This is Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. And I need a trim on my beard. My barber's been out of town for a month. So there you go, folks. Those of you who are looking at YouTube, you can tell. But if you're not looking at YouTube, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But that's okay. It's great to have you with us. We always have a fantastic program. I always, well, almost always, give you all the information up front. It takes about a minute, minute and a half. But I'm going to spare you for right now. We'll sprinkle throughout the program the basic information about who, what, when, where, how, why of Tell Me Your Story. In the meantime, why don't we jump right into our program? Our program is it's going to be a lot of fun. I tell you, I could say this is our Easter program because of the subject matter. Well, sorta, but it's not really. It is a program that is universally year-round, and we're going to talk about something different, something new that this is the first time I've heard of this. And I'm excited to find out more about it from our guest. And we're going to find out about what now, ladies and gentlemen, you know how I am about grammar and spelling and all of that good stuff. So when you say this, it has to start with an, because of the next word. An harmonic egg. That's what we're going to be talking about. And harmonicegg.com is the website. And our guest here on the program is Gail Lynn, who is going to tell us all about what the heck a harmonic egg is. Gail, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
You know, I'm just curious if it's a harmonic egg, does it come from a harmonic chicken?
Why does the chicken cross the road to get to the harmonic egg?
Exactly. So let's, we always like defining terms. This one's going to be fairly simple because really there's only one term to define, and that is, what is an harmonic egg?
Oh, that's a great question. You got a couple hours? Just
kidding. We'll give you at least one and then more. We'll have you back, I guarantee you.
I love it. So it is a large wooden structure. Importance is wood. It is a living technology. It has a living consciousness. It's a beautiful structure where people can actually go inside. It is that large.
Wow.
So I've designed it with sacred geometry. So it has the golden ratio. It has Tesla mathematics. It has some of the consciousness of Edgar Cayce, if you know who that is. And
yes.
Royal Rife, of course you do. Some of your listeners, I think your listeners would all know who Edgar Cayce is.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has its own consciousness. And so basically when you come into a center, there's almost 100 centers now worldwide, which is insane. I'm so humbled by that. The technician will do an intake with you and kind of ask you what you want to work on. And they will escort you into the harmonic egg room where they will recline you in a zero gravity chair. They will have specific lights for what your intention is that day and specific music for what your intention is that day. Recline you in the chair. You're resting beautifully inside this large wooden egg, and the music is spiraling around you 360 degrees in the sacred geometric chamber. It's 40 minutes of music and 10 minutes of complete silence. The silence is where the magic happens, where you integrate, where you are feeling what you're feeling. You're tuning into your own body, your own higher self. You're connecting with source, with creator, with God, whatever word that you might use. And it is just a beautiful experience alone. There's no group healing. We feel that people with group healing, you could be picking up other people's releasing, other people's energies. And the intention is like a prayer where when 2 or more are gathered, we're holding an intention for you as the practitioner, whereas the person in the egg is holding their intention. And it's a prayer for you and to manifest your greatest life, to manifest the abundance, the joy that you're here to experience on this planet. So it's a wonderful experience. I'll let you interject a question at this point.
Well, I'm curious as to why it is wooden. I mean, it's certainly probably one of the cheaper materials to work with in general, but there's got to be more to it than that. And is it a special wood?
Yes. So wood, because every piece of wood, every tree has its own fingerprint. We all have our own fingerprint. When you are working with acoustic guitars and violins and cellos, we're working with wood. So the acoustics to play the music, it's the best way for me to create the experience that I want with the integrity of people's music, of musicians' music. You get the most integrity of the music. It's not bouncing off of plastic or metal. So I created wood. And yes, it's not an MDF wood where it's all pressed wood and you got cherry and teak and pine and maple, because I can hear all those little spirits of the trees talking. So it had to be a solid wood. So we'll use a softer wood. Cherry mahogany is a little bit harder, so the acoustics don't bounce off of it as well. However, it's the sacred geometry and the dimensions that really are the key to the inside resonance and that cubic airspace of the harmonic egg. So it is a specific type of wood. It is wood. I think plastic might be actually cheaper, but it would not sound the warmth that we want with plastic or metal.
It is very intriguing, and it reminds me of those. I think the terms that have been used, of course, have been like these sensory deprivation, if you will, eggs, where or chambers, if you will, where
Pods, yeah.
you might even be in water or salt water or some solution, and you float. I would do horrible because I don't float. I can float face down. Okay, so I would do very well floating face down, imitating death. But floating face up, my sister Jeanette, who just recently passed, this girl, she could jump in the water and she's on her back and she's floating, and I'm going, how do you do that? Because every time I try, I don't know, maybe it's because I get too tense. And my legs start to sink, and then the rest of me follows the legs. What about, now you say it's 40 minutes of music, is that correct?
Correct.
And then it's 10 minutes of silence.
Correct.
So you're looking at, the standard therapy session, but you're on your own. And what you are talking about here represents for us here on Tell Me Your Story, part of what we promote here. Here's one of those little pieces that normally we mention at the front end of the program. We promote the Decade of Perfect Vision, the 2020s, where we ask people to go within, to listen to that still, small voice. This is that process, isn't it?
It is. We
Or
really
part of it
need
anyway.
we need to connect with ourselves. We need to connect with our higher self to find our true path, passion, and purpose. And so many people will go into the egg and feel that they get all these messages. I literally have to bring in a notebook. I get so many messages. My little human brain can't remember all that stuff after 50 minutes. I will get download after download after download. And I feel like it's strengthening the third eye chakra. It's helped me with my migraines, which a third eye chakra imbalance that could cause migraines, as well as imbalance in the nervous system and yada, yada. So I feel like my vision has improved physically and intuitively. And every time I go in, I have a spiritual experience. So I've already worked on a lot of my physical issues over the years using sound and light therapy. And I tell people we are vibrational beings of light from Creator, from God. So we need to heal with sound and light. It's just the medicine of the future, in my opinion. Of course, I'm biased. But Edgar Cayce talks about it as well. As before he passed away, he said if somebody could bring, and I'll paraphrase, somebody would bring together the spiritual forces of sound and the spiritual forces of light, it would be an amazing modality for the future. And that's paraphrasing from his book, Aura. So I feel like it's such an amazing experience. And how many times a day do we sit in silence besides none? We have the phones ringing, the doorbell, the TV, the computer, ding, dong, ding, 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 ding. It's crazy. And some people are very uncomfortable in the silence. because they're not used to it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is magical. And when you get through the process, you see the benefits of sitting in silence. And I learned about it from a German doctor through a white paper who had stated, if somebody listens to calming, relaxing music, in order to integrate it more effectively and hold it longer, you would have them sit for 6.5 minutes of silence for that reason. And so I did the 10 minutes of silence because it takes a minute to acclimate to the silence. And then you kind of are thinking, oh, has it been 10 minutes yet? Are they going to come get me? You know, when is my session going to be over? So in that 10 minutes, you're getting at least a good 8 minutes of that silence, which is just brilliant.
Silence, it's what is interesting is this interview follows one I did just recently where we talked about the spaces between. Now, this was probably more dealing with not just the material world, but that's part of the subject that we discussed. And you're kind of talking about the same thing. And of course, I shared a story in that interview in regards to an experience that I had with a woman who, when I was in this van with this group of people, and we were coming back from a service, a church service of some sort, you know, and I just started singing this song, but I was singing it in such a way that I was kind of jamming all of the words together so as not to have any silence, you know? And she kind of brought that to my attention. She says, why are you doing that? You need to let the spaces of silence, you need to let them come up, because that's what emphasizes or makes those sound areas, the areas of sound, more profound. I hadn't thought of it that way. And that's kind of what you're talking about here, where we need to find the silence. How acoustically silent is this egg? I'm sure it's been measured in terms of decibels. How have you been able to say, I don't know, is the right word eliminate sound from the chamber so that there are no interruptions?
That's a great question. Let me kind of go forth with what you started with. So the space between, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So we don't use any synthesized music because people will try to use synthesized birds, chirping, synthesized flute music. But how do they know when the bird's going to take a breath? How do they know when the flutist, I think that's what you call them,
Flutist
is going
or flautist,
to take
either way.
yeah, flautist, flutist, right? How do you know when they're going to take a breath? You can't synthesize that. You cannot make that up. So it's very important that the Harmonic Egg does not use synthesized music or nature sounds. We use a lot of nature sounds, but they are true nature sounds that were recorded in nature by nature. And nature is so healing, and we can learn so much from nature. I have a hard time with silence. I tend to want to talk through the silence, and, I get nervous. And so I'll just keep yapping and yapping. But sometimes for emphasis, you have to pause. You need the silence. So to go back to the decibels, we know that at 90 decibels, we can be damaging people's cells. So we don't go above 90 decibels. You cannot come into the Harmonic Egg Center and tell the technician, crank me up, I can handle it. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But it's going to cause a healing crisis if the music is too loud and start damaging the cells. So we do not do that. The way the egg is designed, there is a gap between the inside and outside skin. So we do have a way to create the acoustics the way that we do. But there's no way to tell if a center owner has a space that a train comes by during a session. You're going to hear it. Mm-hmm. Some of them have fountains in their office. So during the silence, you hear this gentle music of the fountain outside of the egg. Some of the center owners have a white noise machine because there might be very loud tenants next door. So the silence is different depending on the location you go to, but it's pretty soundproof, and it's pretty amazing. If you have tinnitus, it's a little annoying the ringing seems a little louder, but tinnitus, is a condition that could be inflammation. It could be an Epstein-Barr virus. It could be heavy metals. It could be just a physical damage, eardrum, or physical damage from maybe riding motorcycles or listening to loud music as a child. It could be a kidney imbalance or problem, or a liver imbalance or problem. So therefore, it's really hard to help people who call and say, can you help with tinnitus or tinnitus, how some people say it. Mm-hmm. You really have to bear with the centers and let us do the process of elimination to figure out what is the root cause of your tinnitus.
We are talking with Gail Lynn. We're talking about harmonicegg.com. Harmonicegg.com is the website. We will be linked to it as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. And Gail, I wanted to ask who initially designed this wooden egg? And again, I know you've already spoken to some of the, shall we say, preliminary discoveries, if you will, like, for example, Edgar Cayce. I know another gentleman who I had the privilege of narrating the DVD for Royal Raymond Rife's Rife Frequency Generator, which is basically dealing with sound, but at different frequencies and so forth. So who was the one that created this, or what group, or is there a particular company that designed this?
I did.
You did?
Yes.
Wow. Cool.
I had a lot of blockages to overcome. I'm an engineer. I grew up in the Detroit area, worked in automotive, worked in telecom, worked in Hollywood. The culmination of it is quite comical when you look at how Creator put me where I needed to be all along the way for the last 52 years. But I had a mentor who created a light box that I believe he really was the consciousness of Edgar Cayce. And he did bring together the spiritual forces of sound and light. I just took it to a next level because he created it in a rectangular box, which the sound didn't really, it wasn't an immersive experience like the Harmonic Egg. Mm-hmm. I'm able to control the light differently. So his was a rainbow colored light bulb. And so I felt like we can be more specific with the colors. So we have specific colors. He also used MP3 files, which I know are compressed and cold and clinical, and they don't express the purity of the music of the musician because you cut off the frequencies to make it smaller conveniently to fit on 1,000 iPod or 1,000 songs on an iPod or MP3 player. Right. Our song files are 650, 700 megabytes. So they have the expression, the true expression of the quality of the music. And then he also had his speakers sat beneath a 4-inch foam pad, which was distorting the music to the autonomic nervous system, much like binary code. You have 1001, 1001, where I felt like the nervous system was like, what was that, a one? No, that was a zero. No, that was a one. And it was very distracting. And I found people to come out very anxious and irritated. So yes, I'm the creator of it, but growing up in Detroit, I thought women don't invent things. So it was one of the challenges I had to overcome.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, congratulations, first of all, and hats off to you, because what I'm loving is a lot of the stories that are coming out now about the contributions that women have made over, especially the last century, as we came through the industrial revolutionary period, to get us to where we are today. For example, the space program. And so there's a particular movie that these women specifically were the ones that ran the numbers, that were able to do the calculations to help get us, for example, to the moon or to launch the shuttle or this or that. So again, I think that's fantastic. And it's funny because I grew up in a family of 5 women, 4 sisters and a mother, and then of course myself, my brother, and my father. And I always looked at that as a very positive thing, that I grew up amongst this strong feminine energy. And it seems to me that until, not unless, but until we as a society, as a civilized species, begin to accept and embrace that feminine energy, we ain't going too far. And it seems to me like this egg, the harmonic egg that you have created and developed, can help to do that. Is that a fair assessment? That if a man goes in and he's got his own issues, obviously, he's dealing with whatever healing he's looking for, and or a woman goes in there and the man, and I've heard this is interesting. Maybe you can address this a little bit. I'd love your observations on this, that men have actually been the victims of, not all, but many men have been the victims of this patriarchal philosophy and mindset over the centuries. You know, that they're expected to be this way, that way, or the other way, instead of the way that they are.
Wow, that's another whole interview, right? I can give you my quick assessment of it.
Sure.
But I do believe in the way the patriarchal model is right now. I think we had a matriarchal model. I think it was years and maybe 1,000 years ago. I think the women were in charge, and I think we abused our power. And I think the men said, screw this, like the Black Widow, when it has sex with this male and then it kills it. I think we probably did that, right? So we abused our power, and then the men took over, and now we have to come back into some balance. It should be gods and goddesses are equal. And so with the harmonic egg, I think it's helping men to come to a better balance and get in touch with their divine feminine. And including my boyfriend, he's a hot mess sometimes. And he's a 22 years military, retired chief petty officer. The government will never do anything to harm us. And he's got his blown out tattoos from the Navy. And he's got his Fu Manchu, and he's a biker, and he's a tough guy, biggest heart ever. And I've watched him soften so much over the years. He does egg sessions every week. I think because he knows I want him to do it. But at this point, with all the pain he's in from all the motorcycle accidents and jumping off Navy ships and tearing up his shoulder, he gets so much relief from the pain that he asks for his sessions now. But I've really watched a lot of military guys soften. I've had Marines and people in the guys in the Army, and I've seen them soften. I've heard their relationships are better with their wives, their children, especially their daughters. It is a beautiful thing. And I've really have cried with some of these men. I had one Marine come out. He came in with his wife. They flew from Texas. And he came out and he said, I talk to God all the time, but God talked to me in the egg. Oh. And he's crying. I don't know if I should hug this guy. He's this big burly guy. I don't know what to do. I'm standing there going, okay. And I wanted to just give him a big old bear hug, but sometimes they don't feel approachable. But I'm watching them soften so much. And it's just such a beautiful thing. And I really am grateful to be a part of the process of that.
What's interesting is we sent men to the moon, and when they came back, they would be in those modified airstreams, and they would be quarantined for, I don't know, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. They'd be debriefed. And of course, they weren't, we weren't sure back then about any possible contaminants they might have brought back with them and so forth. So they were sequestered. And then once they were deemed to be, safe, so to speak, they were released out into the population, so if you will. We don't do that. I mean, I'm sure you and I would agree. I wish we didn't have to have a military. I mean, it just seems like such a waste of time and energy, although there are certain aspects of the military that I have a strong affinity for, having never served myself. And that is the bond that these men and women now develop, leaving no man behind. I've got your six, and we've got, we are brothers, or closer than brothers, and that kind of thing. And then when you're in combat, that bond is tightened even more. It's solidified even more. But then when they come back, there is no debriefing. There is no sequestering to work through what they've experienced, which no human being should ever experience. We just throw them right back out into the population. And then we wonder why we have the kind of men and women that we have they're actually afraid to share who they really are because they have been trained not to.
Correct. It's very sad. And I had one guy who was a military sniper, and during his session, he said his finger was, trembling. And I said, "Your trigger finger?" He said, "Yeah." And I found out that he couldn't be out in society at all because when he got angry, he wanted to kill people. And I'm thinking, here I am with this guy at the center by myself. And so,
Right.
but he actually said when he left, he said it felt like the monkey wasn't on my back anymore. And he's now doing construction work, and he's out in society, and he's enjoying life. And, that's priceless.
Gail Lynn's my guest. We're talking about the Harmonic Egg. HarmonicEgg.com is the website, which we will be linked to, and we hope you will stay linked here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we are talking about, an invention, a creation, a method, if you will, maybe even more than just a method of philosophy. You talked about a lot of elements, Gail Lynn, my guest here on the program, about the egg, the harmonic egg. And you talked about, of course, the wood and the sounds. Now, it's interesting, you made reference to MP3s earlier, and I'm quite familiar. I even interviewed the gentleman who created or developed the MP3 compression, which most of what I do, I save as an MP3. And because it's on AM radio, you're not really losing anything. But a dear friend of mine said, "I will never listen to CDs. I will only listen to vinyl because it doesn't sound as full on a CD or MP3 as it does on a vinyl." And he's right. He's absolutely correct. But you also talked about color, light within. So we're not talking about sensory deprivation here. We're actually talking more about sensory assistance, if you will, to facilitate that individual's, as you've defined it, that individual's healing. Correct?
Correct.
Where did you learn about? I'm curious as to the background of knowledge on these particular aspects, because, for example, sound. We've had Jonathan Goldman on this program many times. Matter of fact, promoting his annual event on 14th of February of each year, World Sound Healing Day. Very familiar talking about sound. Talked about, for example, the Mozart effect. Always my first question has always been, why Mozart? Why not Bach or Beethoven, or et cetera, et cetera? We've talked about light, and of course, everything is and has a vibration. Where did you first begin to realize that these were important elements, and you wanted to share them, find out more, and then share them with the world?
In a past life regression with Norm Shealy, he's a medical doctor in Missouri, and so basically, it feels like it was around 3,000 years ago when I was working with sound in Egypt. So we can go to that woo-woo part, or we can go to the 3D world today on Earth. And I've read probably 200 books, if not more. I am an avid researcher. I'm a private investigator, and I am a rebel. So I feel like I went through and, tried to dispel a lot of, people's works, because if you record, as some people say, listen to the tree music, I plug in this little device and I put a probe at the root and I clip on the leaves and I'm playing this plant in the key of C. Well, how the heck do you know that plant is making music in the key of C? What if it was the key of Z? I mean, we don't know. Mm-hmm. So are we really getting the true expression of this? So, I've been doing this for 40 years and all this research. I go, okay, so I try to do a deep dive into everything I do. And so I found some work by a woman named Kay Gardner. She's passed. Sounding the Inner Landscape. And it really resonated with me. After about 98 books, I read her book and I wish I would have read it first. But of course, how the universe works, I wouldn't have probably understood if I didn't read it, the 98 books before. Mm-hmm. So she talks about sound waves. So the sound wave of a drum is different than the sound wave of a flute, which is very simple, different than the sound wave of a piano. So many people say, I'm going to heal with 528 hertz listening to this MP3 file. Are you really getting 528 hertz if you're listening to a compressed MP3 file? Probably not. So I decided that, if the egg is resonating and vibrating at 900 hertz, which has been measured and tested by dowsers and pendulum experts, and it keeps increasing in power, we are using the sound waves of the instruments. Flute music seems to really work with the liver. Drumming seems to work building the immune system, helping to heal bones and physical things. Piano seems to work to balance the autonomic nervous system. And then you add in the colors of the chakras. So our training manual for each of the centers was created by me with all these books in mind, Cindy Dale and her chakra work and the subtle energy bodies and Edgar Casey's work and Royal Rife's work. Now, Royal Rife was brilliant in his time. Mm-hmm. He needs to be around to do the same work now because cancer is not the same cancer. It's not the same frequency as it was in the 30s, 40s, 50s. Mm-hmm. Parasites and viruses, they've been mutated. So those frequencies that he identified using his universal microscope and staining the cells and finding what kills each thing, I believe that it's more advanced now. We need another Royal Rife to identify the current mutations of these viruses and cancers and bacteria. Mm-hmm. So using the instruments and the sound waves, using the body's innate ability to heal, and with the sacred geometry that I have, there is an EG, EGGF, I should say. So an egg field. And then there's the human field. So the human goes into the egg and gives off a field, a frequency, and energy. The egg has its own egg field or energy field, and they start to interact together in that resonant chamber. And then the egg can see there's an imbalance in this human field. Let's work on it. Let's play together. And so I feel like the egg has its own organic energy, and it has a memory and an intelligence. So the more people that go into the egg, the more information, like a self-organizing system, the egg has to identify, we've seen this before. This was in the Peru egg. This was in the Asheville, North Carolina egg. And they connect to each other on a matrix that's like a living consciousness. And it blows my mind. It's beyond my pay grade. So I've been hiring scientists and doctors and saying, okay, tell me more about what this is doing. But there aren't any tests. How do you test these kind of fields? How do you test an innate intelligence? How do you test? There's no machine on the planet that can test this. Mm-hmm. So it's been a series of books. It's been a series of downloads, past lives. I think just a culmination of everything. And then the right people just show up for me. And all of a sudden I'll be in the grocery store and I meet this person and they're, I do this, this, and this. Oh my gosh. They just show up. It's been flowing. Like we talked about in the beginning before you recorded, let it flow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Gail Lynn's my guest, and we are Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it's really a pleasure to have the creator of the Harmonic Egg with us. HarmonicEgg.com is her website. Gail Lynn is her name, and I am fascinated. I had the opportunity some years ago to interview, I love the name of his occupation, the acoustician, for a theater here in Santa Barbara called the Granada Theater. I've been in there many, many times since it was upgraded and refurbished. And he shared with me, of course, how they went in there and they did all of their acoustical tests. And I would look at the walls of the Granada Theater, and they have these tiles. They're probably, I don't know, maybe a foot or 2.5 feet by square, a foot or 2 foot square. And I'm the kind of guy that is always looking for patterns, and I'm looking at all the tiles, and there's no pattern. Why isn't there a pattern? There should be. These are tiles. They're all made the same, but they're not. They're all a little different and so forth. And what he told me was they ran tests in almost every spot in the theater and designed the tiles in the positions they are in for optimal acoustical expression, if you will, from the stage. Then they also included these giant curtains that would cover the panels for other types of events and that kind of thing. But that's what he told me. He says, we went through this whole process. So I'm curious about the process you went through for acoustical, do I want to use the word perfection within the egg?
Great question. I call it the acoustical integrity. But I think the egg is perfect the way it is. And I think it's because of the sacred geometry. But I interview the musicians. Do they have a high heart energy? Are they, are they recording the music for the right reasons? Is it for greed of money? Or is it really to help heal the planet or heal the people that listen to their music? There's beautiful music that's not mastered or composed correctly. So you might not hear it with the right integrity that the egg needs. It has to be mastered and recorded properly. It has to have the right energy of the musicians. I actually have coached and consulted with musicians to hold a space of unconditional love. Now, there is no conditional love. I get that. But unconditional love, not of their ex-wife or ex-husband or ex-spouse or someone they used to love, but I tell them, think of a place of beauty, the land, or a fur baby, because that is the most unconditional love. So they can hold that space. So while they're playing the music for the egg, I'm asking them to hold the space of unconditional divine love. So that comes through in the music. I've actually used some musicians' recordings. I've spoken to them and, got their permission to use some of their CDs. But I will tell you, it's interesting how I can listen to one of their CDs and then another one doesn't work in the egg. It's almost like their energy was off that day. And so I feel like I'm not great at tuning in. My ears are getting better. I can tell between an MP3 file and a WAV file now, but I know what the egg likes. I know what the egg needs. And over time, some of the music actually doesn't work anymore because the egg has raised its vibration. The planet has raised her vibration. Clients and humans have raised their vibration. And some music we've actually pulled. So I don't ever want anybody to say, well, I've done so many sessions, I've just tapped out. It doesn't benefit me anymore. That's never going to happen.
But Gail, you're starting to scare me because you're talking about the egg like it's a living thing, like has a consciousness, or does it?
Or does it? What if? I think his name was Pregonnier. It was a French guy in the 70s who talked about self-organizing systems. You have Ray Kurzweil, The Age of Spiritual Machines. You have the wood of the egg being, a living energy, a natural energy. I can't tell you the amount of stories. I can't tell you the amount of people who will actually thank the egg when they leave. It blows my
Okay.
mind. Now, I'm from a blue collar environment in Detroit, Michigan. I'm just a little Detroit girl with a father who said, when you die, that's it, nothing happens and you're done. And now he's around me all the time, and I have a better relationship with my dad since he's passed than I did when he was alive. So
Hmm.
I come from, an environment that was very pessimistic, very negative, very judgmental. So this blows my mind on so many levels. And it's like, why me? Why was I chosen to bring this through?
Wow. That is pretty darn cool. I love it. I love it. We're talking with Gail Lynn, and we're talking about the Harmonic Egg. You say there are approximately 100 facilities across the country that are available for folks
Across the world, yes.
across the world. Wow. That's even more sparse than I thought. But we'll find out more about that as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and Gail Lynn is my guest, the creator of the Harmonic Egg. HarmonicEgg.com is the website. And I am just utterly fascinated by this concept of this wooden egg. When you are, and I don't want to make any assumptions here, but by the same token, each egg is built individually. And do you exclusively build them, or have you trained people? Because it seems to me, and you kind of alluded to this a few moments ago, that like when one is in the kitchen cooking and is in a particular mind and emotion set, the food is going to taste a certain way, i.e., my grandmother used to make the most amazing tamales. I have searched high and low for them and can't find them anywhere. Well, it's because there is one ingredient that only my grandmother could incorporate. So I'm curious about these eggs when they are constructed, when they are assembled or built, or for that matter, even when the wood is chosen. Obviously, you must go and get the tree's permit. I mean, this may sound strange to some folks, but let me tell you, I do the same thing even when I'm trimming a tree to get the tree's permission and just say, hey, look, I'm not hurting you or anything, and we're here for you, and blah, blah, blah. So what's the process that not just you go through, but the people who help you to put these eggs together and place them and so forth and so on? That's got to be an incredible energetic process.
It's tough because we're human, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our brand attributes are love first, integrity, reliability, and community. I've created a divine feminine matriarchal business model of cooperation. Competition is not going to work anymore. The future of business is going to be cooperation, the divine feminine matriarchal business model. Right. And so everybody on my team, I give them pep talks. I know they think I'm crazy, because we're always talking about love and community, and we're not talking about revenues and bottom lines. And, we're talking about how do we be of service to our communities, and the money will just come. So I actually tell people, do not touch a part of the egg if you can't be in love. And so some of the eggs have to be cleared because, we err, we're human. So sometimes someone will have a bad day. Well, I just assume they don't come to work, but you can't do that. You got to make money for your family. Right. So we'll have to clear the energies. So I have manufacturers in USA, Canada, Europe, and we're training some people in Thailand and looking at Australia for manufacturing. And everybody gets the same speech from me. When you handle the parts, they need to be handled with love, and you need to know what this is doing for people's quality of life. And most of the people, I should say all of the people that are involved with the Harmonic Egg do understand how many thousands of people are being affected in a positive way from the Harmonic Egg. So they live in joy to be able to be a part of this, to make such a big difference. For the permission of the wood, I've been to the redwood forest, to Muirwoods Forest in California. You're in Santa Barbara, it's a lot further north. But, I do talk to the trees. I have trees on my property I talk to. And I do, if I cut a piece of kale off of my kale plant, I ask permission and then I give thanks that it's going to nourish me. And it's there for nourishing me, and I give gratitude. So love and gratitude goes a long way on and be in the earth plane as a human. And I was in the Muirwoods Forest, and it says, big sign, do not take anything out of here. You could be banned from national forest for the rest of your life. So, but the trees asked me one day to take a small branch that had fallen off, to take it to have the energy in my home. So I slid it up my sleeve, and my boyfriend's like, you're going to get banned from all the national forests forever. And I said, I'm a rule breaker. I'm a rebel. So, but yeah, I would not take anything that I didn't ask from the land. And so this stone behind me here, this labradorite, this land asked for it to be here. So that's why it's here.
Mm. Well, we have with us Rebel Gail Lynn. We're talking about her creation of the Harmonic Egg, and we're going to continue doing so right here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and one of the things that is so interesting to me, and you alluded to this, and you probably know of this individual. I learned about this individual through reading the My Metaphysical Primer autobiography of a yogi, which I've probably read several hundred times over the last 40 plus years. And of course, I also found out that it was the only book that was on the iPhone of Steve Jobs, which I found so fascinating. But the gentleman I'm talking about developed a device called the Crescograph. This Indian scientist's name was Jagadish Chandra Bose. And he developed this Crescograph to measure what's the equivalent of the blood pressure, they call it the turgor pressure, of plants, to prove that they do feel, and that very likely they do have a consciousness. And so what you do when you get some kale off of your kale plant, or you get the permission of a tree, you're dealing with a sentient creature, if you will, or being. And I know that a lot of people think that's absolutely insane. But some of the inventions that man has come up with over the centuries have been pretty darn insane, let me tell you. Going to the moon, I don't think so. And that's just a very real material aspect. And then there are those, we never went to the moon. It was a sound stage. Fine, you believe what you will. All I know is that it is with our imagination, Gail, that we do create, and nothing is created out of a vacuum, that it is always from something that came before. And then what we do is we take some of the bits and pieces of those ideas and create something that no one ever thought of creating, or we innovate, It's like with the automobile, just as an example in the last century or so. I mean, look at the first automobiles and look at the ones we have today. Not even close, even though they still do exactly the same thing, get you from point A to point B. Has there ever been, I'll call it a technology like the Harmonic Egg, as far as you know, that has done the kind of work? And I know you mentioned like 3,000 years ago in Egypt and so on and so forth. But in our modern times, say in the last century or two, has there been anything close to this, or did you already kind of go through that with people like Royal Raymond Rife and what he was doing then with what was then?
I think so. I think there's a lot of technologies out there. There's a lot of pods out there. They're made out of metal or plastic. Mm-hmm. There's the Somodome. There's the float tanks. There's a lot of things. And I think we're coming into the solving the problem that people are just tired of invasive medicine and pills and shots, and they want something non-invasive. So now we're hearing more about these med beds. Everybody's all the rave is the med beds that are going to just, grow your limbs back and cure everything in a matter of moments. I'm not sure about that. I feel like we're going to see a lot of energy medicine devices. We don't want them to be regulated because we want the cream to rise to the top and for people to find what works for them. And so I feel like we're going to see more of these modalities. And I think because of nature and our soul beings and how we're all connected by one divine source, we have to be very discerning about who is the inventor of these devices, what karma do they have that could be maybe transferred to you. You've done some interviews, I think it was Judy Lemon, where she said these healers are so dangerous. They're not doing their work, and they're I think she said spewing all their stuff all over to their clients. And I've created the egg to be a consistent and repeatable living consciousness. It's not going to have a bad day. It's not going to get divorced. It's not going to lose all its money in the stock market. It's not going to get, cut off by a bad driver. And so when you go to these healers, you have to be discerning. If they're having a bad day, probably just ask to reschedule, because you're going to pick up all their stuff. We're humans. We have bad days. There is not a human I know on the planet, and I'm sure they walked this planet at some point where they were perfect and they could be neutral 100% of the time. But many of my clients have come in over the years and said, I picked up my healer's anger. I picked up my healer's sadness. I picked up my healer's, disease even. And so the egg is a bit of a healing the healers and helping people to heal. But, that's what I've seen as the problem is people are just tired of this modern medicine of taking a pill. We are now needing to learn to listen to our bodies and to be our own healer.
And this is where listening to one's inner voice, still small voice, comes in, doesn't it?
Yes.
I learned 35 or so years ago about a technique that actually trains you to, after a period of time, almost do this automatically, called kinesiology or muscle testing. I remember the woman's name, Carol Kepler. And I remember when she first taught me, she says, okay, take your one hand and make a circle with your thumb and index finger, then loop your other hand's index and thumb, and then the way you test it to make sure that, you're on is yes and no, And of course, there was also another method where you'd lean up against the wall and you'd press, and then your arm would we used to do this as kids in school. I kid you not, just for fun, for playing around. And the arm would automatically just go up. It would just go up. And I know that it was probably I forget what the name of the thing is, but anyway. And then, of course, if you have your arm out, yes, the arm would stay. They couldn't push the arm down. No, and the arm would go down. And you go in the grocery store and you'd ask the question, should I get this? And you could muscle test. You could do those two techniques. Or, as I say, as you become more and more, you use it more and more, it just it becomes second nature to you. You just know that you know. And I guess that's where you are today, is that you don't have to ask the question. I do this when I'm driving even. I'm coming up to a fork in the road and I just go, okay, go this way. Because I know this sounds bizarre, it just feels right. Now, I've had situations where neither direction felt wrong, both directions felt right. And so it's like my ego mind personality could choose. I let my ego in and, okay, have some fun, enjoy, and make it happy.
I love it. Muscle testing. I do the tilt testing, but I've taken classes in remote viewing, pendulum work. So yes, I just know that I know. I've tuned into source energy pretty intuitively now, and I think it's a muscle, and it's not something that people don't know. I believe everybody can do this, but it's a muscle that you need to develop and you need to practice and you need to practice, just like training for a marathon. But I do the tilt testing with muscle checking. And I've noticed over the years, it's very dangerous because people will say, well, do I need this? I get it. And you get a yes. And so they start taking all these supplements, but they don't say, do I need this with this, and this? That would be a no. Do I need this inside the capsule, or do I need to take this probiotic out of the capsule so that it gets down to the stomach acid, survives the stomach acid, and gets to my colon? People aren't asking the right questions. I had a girl that worked for me and she would water the plants with muscle checking. Do you need water? The plant would say yes or no. So she, is that enough water? Yes or no. And one day the plant was clearly dying. And I said, why are you not watering this plant? Well, it's saying it doesn't want water. So I carried the dead plant outside and noticed a spider web in there. The spider was saying, don't give me any water. So people are not doing muscle checking very thoroughly. Some of my center owners will want a muscle check for what colors the client needs. I advise them not to do that because a lot of them will say, do they need red? Yes. Well, if they said, do you need orange? Yes. Yellow? Yes. Green? Well, what's the highest and best? And so you need to be really specific if you're going to play with this muscle testing for any kind of important things. Now, if you go to the grocery store, do I need an apple or an orange? It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. They're both good.
Yeah. Interesting. Gail Lynn, my guest, and we're talking about the Harmonic Egg. HarmonicEgg.com is the website that we will be linked to here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we are talking about, I guess you could call it a new technology. It's actually old because it incorporates so many modalities within it to facilitate one's healing. Now, did you say you are here in Santa Barbara?
No, you are there.
I am in Santa Barbara.
I'm in Denver.
You're in Denver. Okay. What are some of do you know some of the states in which some of these eggs are available for people? I think you mentioned someone came from Texas, I'm guessing, to Denver.
There are now 3 eggs in Texas, near San Antonio, near Austin, and near Dallas. There's several in California. I think they're all north of you, though. They'd be in Penryn, Westlake Village, Thousand Oaks, Modesto, Castro Valley, that kind of those areas. Mm-hmm. They go from California to New Jersey, and then the Netherlands, England, Peru, New Zealand, Denmark. It blows my mind that people were lining up to buy a large wooden egg.
And can an individual buy the egg, or is this available only through, shall we say, practitioners such as yourself or facilitators?
We do have somewhat financially wealthy people that have them in their homes. So there will be a new technology that comes out that will be more for the masses, for their homes. That's in process. It would be more of a maintenance, what you would do between your egg sessions. But I look at the egg as more of a professional commercial use to help. And then it's affordable to the masses.
And I know that that's a real concern for a lot of folks in that regard. It's like, boy, I would really love to, but I just don't have the wherewithal. And of course, now with the, I'm going to call it the specter. I am a person who is of the glass is half full philosophy, and so forth. And although I'm still questioning, what is the glass half full of? That's what I want to know. Not that that's all that important, but nonetheless, because everybody is now in this mode of they're in this philosophy right now of lack, that there's not enough. And of course, I've always said there's always been more than enough. It isn't about whether there's more than enough. It's about the distribution and who's controlling the distribution of whatever it is that you want. I just heard, as of this program that you and I are involved in here, this conversation, fuel prices here in the States are starting to go down again. It's like, yeah, that's what happens, ladies and gentlemen. Things go up and they go down and they go up. It's the cycle of things. But I want to ask you, in regards to the cycle of things, your particular perspective and philosophy on dualism, because we've had more than 2 or 3 or 4 dozen conversations with our guests about this aspect of dualism, which for a while I fought with. I struggled with. I'm going, wait a minute, the ancient wisdom teachings tell us where we come from, the one, and where we're going to, the one. Then why are we in this dualistic world, and so forth? And then I began to take a look at the macro cosmic world out there in the universe. Stuff happens out there, right? There's no judgment. There's no dualism out there. And on the microcosmic level, the same thing. But here, where you and I live, for some reason, we seem to think that it's good or it's bad. And I love the Chinese story about the farmer and his son and the neighbor who comes over every day and asks, so how things going? And the farmer explains what happened. Oh, that's bad. Well, who's to say whether it's good or bad? And the next day, oh, that's good. Well, who's to say whether it's good or bad? And I've come to this conclusion, Gail. It just is. It's neither good nor bad. It just is. It's just the way. It's like floating down that river. If you go to the left shore, it just is. You go to the right shore, it just is. You go through some rapids, it just is. And it's our ego mind and personality that distracts us and makes us think that it's good or bad. How does the egg help with that?
I think the egg is helping to neutralize people, to make them more neutral, to have less judgment, to release trauma that has caused people to define good and bad. Is murder good or bad? Well, what if you had a soul contract with somebody and that was your soulmate that murdered you because that's what you wanted to experience in this lifetime? So we can't judge. And trust me, I came from the most judgmental, critical mother on the planet, and I still am my mother. And I have to really be, careful because I had so many years of programming of, why is that lady? Why is she wearing that? Why are they doing that? It was so crazy. So I don't believe there is any good or bad. It's neutral. And my favorite saying is, it is what it is. So when you said it just is, it is what it is. And money is energy. I'm trying to track what you said. I'm making some notes here. Money is energy. Yeah. So you attract energy. And I tell people, don't ever give a lot of free sessions to people because it has to be an exchange of energy. So they have to pay something. Otherwise, they don't appreciate it. And it's not an exchange of energy. If somebody does something for me and I take my time, I want to, I can pay with an exchange of energy, or they can pay me with their time. There has to be an exchange of energy. There has to be balance, just like nature. I have a tree growing outside and everybody keeps trying to stake it because it's growing like this, like literally it wants to grow this way. Well, who are we to judge that it's life's perfect purpose is not to grow this way. And if you're not on video, I'm saying it's like at a 45-degree angle to the south. It wants to bend that way. Yeah. And everybody comes over. Let's stake the tree. We got to hold it up. Why? Why do we have to? Yeah. It's interesting because we brought an Aleppo pine from Phoenix 16 years ago in a pot, and it was one of our Christmas trees, that we would use each year, and it would get a little bigger and a little bigger. Well, finally we put it in the ground, and it was growing like a weed. I mean, it was going crazy. Obviously, it loved being in the ground. And then one storm came through. And instead of it being straight up vertical, it was now leaning almost 45-degree angle. And of course, I thought, well, I better go and push it up, push it straight up, And I never did. And it started growing out at such an angle, and it was leaning across this particular path. And somebody came along and trimmed it so that it wasn't in the path.
But then it started to do its own thing, and it's now vertical again, and it's got to be 30, 40 feet tall now. And it righted itself, and I knew that it would. Take a look at hillsides where trees are growing. Now, normally you'd think that a tree, as our example here, is going to grow straight out perpendicular to the ground it's in. Nuh-uh. If it's on a hillside, it's going to go straight up, vertical.
Yep.
So if it's on a hillside, it's going up vertical. It's not going perpendicular to the ground that it's in. It knows what direction to go. So do we, if we will but listen to that voice within. And what you have offered to folks through the Harmonic Egg, I think is a wonderful tool and an opportunity as well. Who knows, maybe one of these days, one of the things that we are looking at here on this program is taking this show on the road. And that would be a rather interesting experience to travel to one of these locations where one of these eggs are. And I don't know if you could take a camera or recording devices in there to sort of share the experience with listeners and or viewers, but it would be fascinating to be there, and then of course talk to people who've experienced that wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, we've had journalist Coolest Coast in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. She took a camera in there and she recorded what she was feeling and experiencing throughout her session. We've had many journalists and camera crews come out. Gaia TV was out. I've been on Gaia TV, and they recorded a lot of what's happening inside and client testimonials as they came out. So it's definitely doable. People have done it.
Yeah. To me, that's the whole point of this program, is to talk to people who are changing their lives and working towards making this world a better place for everybody, not just a select few. I find it fascinating and maybe a little frustrating that there are still so many in this world who don't care about the welfare of the people that supposedly they're there to serve. And when I use the word serve, it's in the context of the corporations and the companies and even the small businesses, where it's like the economy is the most important thing in our civilization. You got to be kidding me. And I hear about how this country, for example, was supposedly founded on Judeo-Christian values. Well, one of them is that you worship God, not mammon. But we're worshiping mammon because we're going after the money. And by the way, you alluded to one of what I like to call one of the universal laws, and that is the universal law of exchange. There is always, always, always an exchange. You can't escape it. But it doesn't mean that the exchange is going to be in the form that you think it might be. I worked for a Christian radio station for 15 years. My salary doubled in 15 years. All right? And a lot of the people that would come work that I would train, they would say, oh, you guys don't pay me enough to do this or that or the other thing. I said, well, I'm sorry, but that was in the job description when you were hired. I could have gone down that road, but I began to realize that I was getting more from that job, that opportunity, than just the paycheck. And here I am today, and I'm real excited that I went through that particular part of the river. It taught me a lot. And so I applaud you for the work that you are doing, and I thank you so much for being with us here on the program.
Thank you. And I agree. The nourishment of the soul is sometimes more nourishment than for your wallet.
Absolutely. Gail Lynn is my guest, and you're listening to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host of Tell Me Your Story. We're talking with Gail Lynn, the creator of the Harmonic Egg, and harmonicegg.com is the website that we will be linked to with this particular broadcast, podcast, video cast. And Gail, I thank you so much for giving us so much time here on the program. This is just absolutely, I said this to one of my guests before, and I probably will use this for some time to come. It's been quite a blessing to get to know you and the work that you're doing. It's not that I want to come across as a yes person for you, or I'm promoting, or like this is an infomercial, but what you have to offer is just, it's extraordinary. It's something unique and different that has not been offered to the general public, for I'd say quite some time. And I applaud you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Some people call me courageous, but it's just like, this is what my thing is. This is my path. This is where I know I'm supposed to be. And for the most part, it's been easy.
Yeah. Yeah. You and me both. I do have 3 final questions that I'd like to ask you before we wrap up, that I ask all of my guests here on the program. But before I do that, let me talk to you, the listener and the viewer of Tell Me Your Story. I thank you for watching and tuning in to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, as we give you choices and knowledge of those choices. To help make your dreams come true, we are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., and 9 a.m. on Wednesdays for our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. And we stream live at those times at richarddugan.com. We have podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. We are on YouTube, where you can watch these interviews. And I hope you'll subscribe. Not for my benefit in terms of increasing the number of subscribers, but for yours, so that when you subscribe, every time I post a new video or audio file, podcast or videocast, you get notified that there's a new program to listen to, a new guest, a new idea, a new concept, a new philosophy, a new way of living. And I hope that you will do that. We also ask that if you can support us financially, we would be ever so grateful. We don't use the tactics of Christian radio that if you don't help us, God will smite you, or we'll have to cancel and no longer do this program. Think again. We'll do this program regardless of support, but your support is always gratefully appreciated, and we thank you for those who have and for those who will. We also ask you to participate. Oh, I should say that we have a PayPal account for this purpose, and it's there for your security as well as ours. We also ask you to participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision, where we ask you to go within and listen to that still small voice, or the divine, whatever it is that you call that, and just lay back, relax, and let the river take you. How about that? You'll be guided. And it's going to be it's going to be a wonderful trip. It really is. With that, we are now going to go on to our final 3 questions that we like to bring to each one of our guests. And the first of those is, who is Gail Lynn?
That's a good question. Sometimes I wonder the same thing. I think, I've always been somebody who's wanted to help humanity, a bit of a rebel and a dreamer. And it reminds me of the Seinfeld episode when Jerry tells Kramer, "You're a pod, you're not human," alluding to he's not human. And he said, "Well, I like to help the humans."
I like that. What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you are doing now?
I want to give people the quality of life that I enjoy, with living in love and abundance and joy and happiness and staying out of fear. And I just want people to release the things that keep them from that in their cells, so that they can experience that love and joy and abundance that I think we're here on the planet to experience.
And finally, what is your life's purpose?
Well, I think I'm doing it. I think at the age of 37, I really am blessed and so much gratitude that I was led to doing this invention, to educating people about how to heal, how to have a better quality of life. And I think I'm on my path, and I'm doing my purpose.
Well, we thank you for being on purpose and for being on Tell Me Your Story. And we look forward to talking with you again to see how things are going and hopefully learn more about maybe some tracking methods that maybe you've employed to kind of see how things have been changing in various communities where people are receiving this experience.
Thank you.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal and Jeanette, I am listening.